Hello, this is Philip, and it is episode 239 of the Lookout Sir podcast. It's just me doing the intro, but I will be joined by two special friends for the rest of the show. In this episode, we are talking all about the Warhammer World Grand Tournament Age of Sigmar event that I went to a couple of weeks ago. We were joined by Tim, Richard, and Dan going up there and playing some games of Age of Sigmar. So it was a great time. We thought this would be a good excuse to get together, have a chat, and talk about how we got on at the event. Obviously, there's loads of talk all about 40k, the new edition, pre-painted terrain, all of that interesting stuff. And we're not doing any of that. We're talking about Age of Sigmar instead, because we are not trend followers. Instead, we are trend setters. So later on in the episode, I'll be joined by Tim and Richie as we sit down and chat about how we did at the event. And then there'll just be a little outro ramble featuring myself at the very end. As always, if you'd like to watch along, you can head over on YouTube and delight in the video format or listen along on your usual podcast formats. That's the intro out of the way, so let's get on with the episode. Transitional noise. In this part of the podcast, we're talking about the AOS Grand Tournament that we went to Warhammer World. And joining me in this segment is Tim. Hello, Tim. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
That is very good. And then we're also joined by Richie. How are you doing, Richie?
Hello. Glad to be here.
You've survived the week.
I've survived the week. Well, I've survived surgery, so that's good.
That's good. You know, props to you for having your back cut open and stitched back together again.
So yeah. Although it's made my voice sound weird. I don't know if that's just today.
Yeah, maybe it's maybe you're talking too much during surgery and you strained your voice.
Maybe. I would like to point out this is like the first time that I've come back from a weekend and I've not been ill. I've not picked up like the Warhammer lurgy or anything like that. I normally suffer.
Yeah, and I mean, I normally lose a bit of voice on Monday or Tuesday, and I think I did okay. So maybe it's a delayed reaction, Richie, from the weekend.
That could be it.
Yeah. So a brief overview. We went up on Friday, as we normally do. Me and Tim had a test game for the weekend. Richie, you played some Spearhead with Sean while we were gaming. That looked interesting. Did you enjoy your games?
I did enjoy playing Spearhead. I always enjoy playing Spearhead because it's quick and fun.
Nice. Yeah, I've still yet to ever get a game in, so I need to give that a go at some point.
I had to proxy some minis because I didn't actually have a Spearhead army. But I used 3 Ogoids to represent 3 of the
Man-Crusher Gargants.
Yeah,
I thought that's what you were doing when I was like, there's only 3 models. They must be Gargants. Yeah, that's good. So we did that. And then Saturday, the big event. So it's the golden tickets version. So if you win, you can get golden ticket and not go to America. I think it was Barcelona or somewhere in Spain.
Yeah, it was Barcelona this year.
Yeah. Which I think is maybe, I don't know if it's to keep costs down, but I suspect it's cheaper to fly some people from America to Europe than everyone from Europe to America, is what I would hazard.
I would suspect they want to switch up where it goes.
Yeah, I think that's also a good idea.
I think to make it clear to the Americans that they're taking this seriously, the first one has to be in America. Then you come back to Europe and see how that goes. Then we'll see. It's a new case of we'll see where their audience is big for Warhammer. They could do China, but that could be awkward for visas. I know in video games, it's like going to in Asia has always been a big factor because there's so many players. You have in esports. I don't know how big the global competitive Warhammer scene is for.
I mean, I assume it's growing, but it's still probably much smaller than it is in Europe and America.
It's definitely grown in the Asian side of the world.
Yeah. The format, 2,000 points, like a standard tournament, over 2 days, 3 games on the first day, 2 games on the second. As always, I think there's like victory points count towards like your final score, but so do favorite game and favorite army votes, which is a sort of standard affair for Warhammer World events. However, there's sort of 2 top positions that you can win. There's Best General, which is just on the gaming scores. And then there's Best Overall, which is a combination of your gaming scores plus favorite game and favorite army votes. And then the one that I always forget about is the favorite the best in faction. So each individual faction has a chance to win a little award as well. And then those that only had one player participating in that faction all get put into a bucket of the best of the rest. So they're all competing against each other, effectively to stop you auto-winning that particular faction, basically. So yeah,
I wouldn't feel bad about it, Phil. I think we all forgot there was a Best in Faction award as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's kind of like a
surprised
whatever.
when they even mentioned it, yeah. Because I guess you could sort of try and meta-game it. If you were just desperate to win something, you could try and pick a faction that you don't think is going to be that popular. But then if you actually are the only person taking that faction, probably in a harder position than a person that's happened to maybe just have two other players in their same faction, because I think in the best of the rest there was at least 5 or 6 players, and I think on average there's probably like 4 people per faction. I would guess.
I think it's nice as another element. It's like, you're there to get your golden ticket.
So when we arrived at Bugman's, I was sort of pleasantly surprised with how quiet it was. But I think the last event we had been to was a doubles event, so it always feels more packed. But I was also a bit shocked with the sheer number of people wearing sports jerseys for their, particular AOS gaming club or team. There seemed to be quite a lot of that, which was a bit concerning. But I didn't play anyone that had one of those, so it was all fine for me.
No, there was definitely people from Spain, Team Spain. I think some from the Dutch team. I'm not sure if there was anyone from the England team. I don't know.
I don't know if the Spanish. Well, there's a Spanish guys I played. I don't think they were like Team Spain. I think they just happened to be Spanish.
I thought they were Team Spain. Somebody was telling me they were Team Spain.
Unless there were two lots of Spanish people that had come over, and some were regulars and some were more competitive.
I think the important thing is there was professional esports style jerseys in attendance.
Which means you're a professional. If you're wearing a jersey, you're a professional.
Yeah, I mean, Saturday I was wearing my Lookout Sir branded T-shirt, but it's not a sports jersey, so I'm clearly just a casual player.
You are just a casual player. If you're just wearing a T-shirt, you're just a filthy casual.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's talk about the lists that we took. Tim, do you want to start off with yours?
Sure. So for this tournament, I took the Maggot King and Nurgle, and I was going with the theme of an all-demon list. So for the first regiment, it was Rotigus, who was my general, not the Scourge of Garam one. And then a unit of plague drones, a unit of plague bearers. My second regiment was a Great Unclean one with a Rust Fang, with another set of plague drones, another set of plague bearers, and Spoilpox Scrivener. And then my third regiment was Poxbringer, Herald of Nurgle, and some Nurglings. And the Poxbringer had the Uncontentious Preacher Art of Heroic Trait, just so he could be a priest as well as a wizard. And then for my final regiment, fourth regiment, was Slopsy Bile Piper and another unit of 10 plague bearers.
Nice. That sounds pretty good. The two big guys, the Great and Clean one and Rotigus, was definitely, one looked really good, but two, a tough combo to try and deal with them both.
It was quite a lot of fun, just like slapping them down both on the table. I will admit that it felt good just to have like two big guys wobbling around.
Nice. And then Richie, what did you take?
I took my Champions of Chaos list, which is where all the heroes in the Slaves of Darkness list get +2 attacks. So I played Hero Hammer. I just took nothing but heroes. So I had Abraxia, the Skyran version. I had a Chaos Lord and a Karkadrak. I had Eternus, the guy who is on a horse who supports Bellicle. And two Chaos Sorcerer Lords, and then 8 Ogroid Myrmidons.
Nice.
That was my list.
How many auxiliaries did you end up taking?
Only 3 auxiliaries. Because in the original version of this list, I had like 10 auxiliaries for the lols, which was a mistake because I could have won the tournament if I hadn't done that. Because I just thought it'd be hilarious to have nothing but auxiliaries. But in doing so, every one of my opponents could get the reroll on the initiative.
Right, yeah.
Because I had no business to. I could have easily just had 5 attachments. But so that now, and the previous time I took this similar list, I had like 10 auxiliaries. This time just the 3, because they've made some changes to the points and how it works now. That each auxiliary you take is 20 points, then 60 points, then 120 points.
Yeah, it like keeps accumulating up.
It accumulates a lot, so I had to the most points, the least points inefficient way I could do it was to take 8. Was it 8? Yeah, 8 Myrmidons was the least points inefficient way of doing it,
Right.
and then some other characters on top.
Nice. Yeah, it seems like lots of, because I also took quite a few detachments, and I'll talk about that in a second, but it sounded like quite a lot of other people was also surprised with the sheer number of players that had detachments that were like 4 or 5 in size, because I think normally you try and go for as few drops as possible, so you get the priority in the first turn, but I think because you get the reroll, I think people are a bit more inclined to just go for bigger detachments. I didn't really have much choice in terms of my list building. It felt like, because you can only take certain heroes in certain detachments, I was like, oh, I needed this many. So I took Death Stalkers, which was for my Nighthaunt, which was the ability to pick a unit and it can fall back and charge or fall back and shoot and not take any mortal wounds. In my General's Regiment, I took Kurdos Valentian, who's like the king. I took the standard version because he has an ability which combos with a Craven Throne Guard. So every time he charges in, they get to shoot with their crossbows. So I took one reinforced unit of Craven Throne Guard. A Lord Executioner who had the 2 enhancements. So he had Rulers of a Spectral Host, so I could heal 3 units, D3 heals in my hero phase. And then the Tombstone of the Penitent, which is basically +1 attack for each terrain piece I contest, which some games was between 2 and 3, and then it was up to 5, I think was the max, but it can technically go up to 8, but I just never contested that many terrain pieces, so quite good to just try and buff him, so he's a lot more swingy. 2 units of Spirit Hosts as well accompany them, because they both give those heroes a 4-up board, which is quite cool. And then in my next regiment, I took the Knight of Shrouds on Eternal Steed, reinforced unit of Hex Wraiths, that was like my horsey contingent, Chain Ghasts, which is a unit of 2, and they in combat on a 3-up give +1 to hit, everyone within 12 inches. And then my next attachment was Reikenor the Grim Hailer, who's the wizard, the only one I've got. 2 units of Chain Rasps, which is like my sort of screening unit, and they also get a 6-inch scout move at the start of the game, which is quite useful just to shuffle them up the board. And then the Dreadblade Harrows, which is a unit of 2 horses that can teleport around. And then lastly, a Regiment of Renowned, which is a Stumblefoot Gargant, which is basically a Man Crusher Gargant, basically, who was my Mongol, which if you'd seen in the previous episode, is an old Forge World mini. But I was running it as the Man Crusher Gargant, basically. And then I had the Kronspine as my endless spell, who, spoilers, only turned up in 1 game, which was dreadful. I just never managed to roll an 8 to cast him, which was quite frustrating. But yeah, let's get on with game 1. Tim, why don't you start us off and tell us who you played against and sort of how the game went. And before we do that, I can quickly talk about the mission, Creeping Corruption. So it's quite a simple one in terms of it's hold 1 objective, hold 2 objectives, or hold more objectives. And then, yeah, I won't do the twist because they're a bit random and also they don't always trigger. But in terms of scoring, it was pretty straightforward. But yeah, Tim, who was your opponent? How did the game go?
Sure. So my first opponent was a lovely guy called Dean Bryan, and he was running Nighthaunt, and he was wearing them as Deathstalkers. So not Quicksilver Geese, which is normally stuff that I run into. He had his battle tactics were scouting forth and wrathful cycles, and he was running Kurdos, some Chain Ghasts, the Craven Throne Guard, which was reinforced, a unit of Hex Race and Scriptor Mortis. And then for his second regiment, he had a Krulghast Cruciator, which had the Brazier of Nagashazar, some Dreadscythe Harridans, which were also reinforced, some Grimghast Reapers, which were reinforced. And then in his third regiment, he had a Guardian of Souls with the Ruler of the Spectral Hosts, and then 2 unit of Chain Rasps. Oh, he also had like his faction terrain as well. You know,
Yeah.
the little Nexus of Greek things.
Yeah, the little mausoleums.
Little mausoleums that teleport and float around. So I went into the game like thinking, Nighthaunt. Phil plays Nighthaunt. I've played a little bit of Nighthaunt. I kind of know how this is going to go. However, my deployment wasn't great, and Dean is a very good player. He has all the death armies. He plays all the death armies. So he knows death, I would say, fairly well and inside and out. But it was a really great tactical game. It was my deployment that let me down. I still feel like I played it quite well, but some of the combos and synergies that you get with Nighthawk really do just like tear units apart. Like the damage, it's chip damage, but that chip damage can be crazy good. And then my Rustfang artifact had no impact on his heroes because the Rustfang is basically -1 to the save for the rest of the battle, but only to heroes. Only to a hero. So by the time the Great Unclean One got in combat, it was like no point anyway. So yeah, so really good game. I ended up losing that one. Not too badly. It was like 78-50 to Dean. So yeah, so not a total arse hand into me, but still, yeah, still got a beating though.
That's fair. I guess playing me didn't really help too much in terms of what to expect. I guess he's got a very different list as well. There's like some similar units, but it's much more like infantry heavy.
Yeah, I will say, like, after that game, we spoke about the game and we spoke about how to deal with Night the Haunt and just generally your thoughts about my list as well and how I should play it. And I actually had similar ideas, but that game kind of it was kind of like it helped. This was the first time I've used the new book as well, and I didn't realize how much has changed. Like I'd listened to AOS Coach, I'd listened to the Honest Wargamer. I was aware of these changes. I was aware of what units have changed, but I am very much like a tactile person. Like stuff doesn't really land or stick in my mind unless I do it myself. So it was a great eye opener, that game as well. But Dean played it really well and actually gave me some lovely tips as well going forward.
Oh, that's cool.
But
Brilliant.
I would say playing your Nighthaunt did help though.
Yeah, okay. That's something. Yeah. Well done.
Thank you.
Richie, how did you get on in your first game?
My first game, I was up against Stu Hilton and his orcs and his iron jaws, and they were like blue and orange. They were really pretty. It was a slight advantage because in that Dan runs stuff similar to this, so I knew lots of what his tricks were. For example, like he had a giant big pig that gains momentum points. I'm like, I want to charge that before it charges me. And these are brutes. I hate them. I'm going to charge everything in my army into one blob of these reinforced brutes and not the other one, and weather the storm, which did work. So it was a tough, bloody affair of my ogroids rushing up the board and then slamming into these orcs. We're just seeing who can die first, which was quite fun. It was a good straightforward first game, but I did come out on top on the dice rolls by the end of it, so I did clinch the win there. It's what the thing with AOS is, so you can look at the final score and think I got a really high score, but the problem is that's just because there was a turn 5, and you got 20, and whoever wins gets 20 points in turn 5, and the other person doesn't. Sometimes you can feel like. You can feel like, oh, this person stomped me, or I stomped this person, and it wasn't a case of that. It was just over in turn 4. And a turn 5 happened, and then whoever was winning got 20 points, and the other person got nothing. So I thought it was a really good game. I enjoyed it a lot. Did beat Stu and his beautifully painted orcs in that first game.
Nice, well done. Great to start off on a high bar and get a win. Unlike Tim, who's like going down to the fun tables, which is kind of what I wanted. I was like, oh, it's Grand Tournament. I don't want to play lots of competitive people. I'd sort of ideally lose my first game and then maybe get a few wins as I go along. I played against a lovely guy called David. His son was there mostly in support and playing on his Wii or something. I think, not Wii, whatever the current Nintendo one is.
Nintendo Switch,
yeah. He was on his Nintendo Switch, I think. But I was playing David. He had Cities of Sigmar, which was a glorious old world army. It was his original AOS 1 army, which was ported over from Fantasy. So they looked like high elves because the models were high elves, but he was running them effectively as dark elves in the Cities of Sigmar list. I'm not sure. It was basically 3 massive reinforced units of infantry, which were probably either the Blackguard or the Dread Spears. I'm not actually sure which. But then he had 3 dragons, which I think were the Dreadlord and Black Dragon. And there was one that was a bit more combat focused, and the other 2 were more just sort of like buffing wizards. And he had like the beautiful old models all going for him. Really nicely painted as well. There was just a lot of models, a lot of bodies, basically. But it was quite a good game. It felt quite close at times. I think I made a bit of a mistake where he charged his combat dragon into some of my units, and I basically heroically intervened with Raikkonen because he's the wizard killer. So I was like, I'll swing in with him. And if I don't kill him, at least I've damaged him for the second round of combat, which will be my turn, and then I'll finish him off. But basically, he just activated his dragon first and then killed Raikkonen. And I was like, okay, that didn't quite go to plan. And I think that's my problem with Raikkonen is I try and swing him in sometimes because he's really good at combat, but not much else. Casting for Kronspine didn't happen in this game, which was a shame. And that was a thing that was doing a carry on for most of my other games as well. But yeah, it felt pretty good. In terms of how close it was. It was a slow game. We got to turn 3 when it was called, and then he narrowly won. It was 39-41. And I think at that point he was like, oh, do you want to talk out the other turns? And I was like, oh, no, I'm happy to sort of just, call it there because I think it was so close that I didn't want to talk it out and then be like, well, technically I could have won in a later turn. So I was like, well, let's just call it there and not worry too much about anything else because it's like that's when the timer runs out. So that's, what should be the winner is decided at that point and not talk it out any further. So yeah, it was good. He was a really lovely chap. I had a good game. If we'd got some more turns on, it might have turned out differently, but who knows? The infantry blocks were a lot to deal with, basically, in that one.
What's their characteristics? Do they have a high save or do they have a massive damage output?
I think he buffed them with spells, I think, if I recall rightly. And it depends which one it was. So the Black Guard are a 4-up save, but when there's an elf infantry hero in combat, they get a 5-up ward, which could have been the ones that he had. And then the Dread Spear version have anti-charge on their spears, and if they didn't charge, they get +1 to wound. I mean, it sounds like it could have been either of those, but I'm not actually sure, which is a bit of a shame. And then, the dragons were pretty good and a lot to deal with. I think I killed one or two of I think I killed 2 dragons by the end, like the punchy one and then one of the wizard ones. And then I was sort of about to deal with the third and final one, I think, as the game was called. But yeah, it was a fun game. So I was happy to take my loss because it felt quite close and go down to the lower tables. Game 2, I believe, was Life Cycle. So this is one where you have the objectives, which sort of the priority of it is determined on the second turn, and then it sort of moves around because there's 4 main objectives and the priority moves around in a clockwise fashion. And then the secondary objectives are ones that are either side of that objective. That's the main kind of gimmick of Life Cycle, basically. Let's keep the same order. So Tim, tell us who you were up against in game 2.
Okay, so for this one, I was up against a lovely chap called Joe Catterson, and he was running a gorgeous army. I'm sorry, I'm going to speak a little bit about this first. So the painting style, because that's my thing. The painting style was I called it the layering sort of, it's not heavy metal, but it's like that very clean, very layered style of highlighting. So you can clearly see the different colors. It kind of acts as like a shade, but it's not. It's just very well defined. It's very clean. It's very striking. And on this army, it just looked great. So he was running Hedonites for Slanesh, which I think is a gorgeous range already, and it was running as invaders. It was a 2-drop, and he had Sigvold, he had a Lord of Hubris, Mimradish, Painbringers. He had the Scourge of Garan Fiendbloods, which were reinforced. He had some Sickblade Seekers, which were also reinforced. And then he also had a Keeper of Secrets, Blizzbarb Archers, some Demonettes that were reinforced, and another set of Seekers. This game was pretty close. It was quite a load of shenanigans until the last few turns where the points started escalating started going out of control, as they normally do. But I played this one slightly differently. So in the first game, I had my Great Unclean One off to the right-hand side and my Roticus in the middle, trying to give that debuff aura of a -1 save whenever I got the spell off, which didn't happen that often, actually, which was a bit annoying. So this time, I basically just put my plague drones up in front first, and then I had my Roticus and Great Unclean One just behind them, and then some plague bearers on the back, Nurglings off to the right, other set of 2 units of plague bearers off to the left, and then like my heroes just plonked around, either supporting one of the plague bearer units, and it actually worked pretty well. And I managed to weather most of the damage, and we were having this like great back and forth with some of the units. His Blizzbarb archers like smashed into the plague bearer units and literally like obliterated them, which was kind of expected. But like Rotigus and Great Unclean One were holding their own as well. And we had this funny moment where the Great Unclean One pretty much wiped out like the whole Demonette unit except for one, and this one lonely Demonette managed to take off the last wound of the Great Unclean One, and so we decided to call her Sally. And then Sally survived until one of my plague drones came back and smashed into her. So that was Gary. So Gary took her out. And that was pretty much the spirit of the game. But I ended up losing, unfortunately. It was like a 70 to 37 loss. Like Richie was saying earlier, like I held my own for the first few rounds, but those last rounds, Joe just like steamrolled me and took it out of my hands, which is absolutely fine. He was a lovely guy. And it was a great game. The Hedonites of Slanesh have some cool little shenanigans where it's kind of like where I think it's his Lord of Hubris, where he can present a challenge and you get to strike first, but you have to attack the Lord of Hubris.
Okay.
I think that's it. I apologize if I get that wrong.
Yeah, there is some shenanigans involving like you have to attack him. Like that's like the deal you make is that you have to attack him or you get strike last or something.
That was it.
Right. Okay.
And then Sigvald, like I think Sigvald gets like a 3d6 charge or something, and then also
and its attack's characteristic is
based on that
number.
Yeah, which is just awesome. Cool. Like it seems like a real fun army to play, and I have this thing of like I already have a Chaos army, but all the Chaos gods seem fun. But
well, you could just be a Chaos faction player and collect all the other Chaos armies.
I know, but I kind of want one of each Grand Alliance.
Also understandable. Yeah,
I just want all the toys, Phil.
I know. That's what Spearhead's for.
This is true.
Nice.
But yeah, so overall, great game. Joe won, and deservedly so. And yeah, he later went on to win one of the not best painted, but he was nominated. He was in the cabinet.
For best army. Okay.
For best army.
Well, that is a nicely painted army then.
So,
very good. Yeah, Richie, how did you get on in your second game?
So my game 2 was against Carlos from La I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation for our Spanish word, but from La Compañía Wargaming from Barcelona. There was 2 of them who'd come over, Carlos and Miguel, and I played Carlos in my second game. He was running a Slaves to Darkness, whereas I had all of the drops and individual heroes. He had the complete opposite of this, in that he had Be'lakor, a reinforced unit of knights, reinforced unit of chosen, a reinforced unit of warriors, and a lord on a mount, and that was it. That was his army.
Doesn't seem like a lot, but I imagine it is.
Blobs of shenanigans and hard to shift stuff. And it was a very fun game because the first like 2 turns was just like I was kind of just dancing around of who's gonna charge who first. Who's going to commit to getting into combat? And it's hard because he's got these blob units that will do loads of damage, and I've got lots of little ones. And which is a theme I found during the event, is that this being like the GT level of Age of Sigmar, it's very much who's going to bring the best reinforced units with the best selections of buffs for those reinforced units. And friends of the show will know I'm not a fan of reinforced units. Anyway, but so it was a very tough game because it's like shifting 20 Chaos Warriors is not easy because that's 40 wounds with a 3-up save. So you've got to just slowly get through. The chosen has hit like a truck. I thought I had some opportunities to try and like tip the balance in my favor by able to get like strike last off on the chosen. But I really got stuck by he had a 10-man knight unit, which is 40 wounds on 3-up saves. That's hard to deal with. And while I charged it, so it could do much damage to me, it did have the dread banner, which was I couldn't use any commands. So there's no all-out attacks, no all-out defenses on my side, which isn't too much of a big deal. But it was a bit frustrating because he could still do it to me. It's like he's still smacking me really hard with one of his units and then tanking a lot of damage with another. Whereas I'm just like up to the dice gods. So I want to say it was very close. I'm going to look at what the score was. That was actually pretty close until it wasn't in that one. But Carlos did get the victory on me in the end. I was by about halfway through. I focused a bit too early on. I just need to kill Be'lakor because I could see myself not being able to win it. because he was working his way through my Ogroids quicker than I was working my way through his units. So I was like, I need to try and take down Be'lakor. He's a wuss. He's never that tough. Whenever I've got Be'lakor, I can't make a 4-up save for days. Carlos, no, he can make all the 4-up saves. Or more specifically, I can fail to hit with everything, because there was a moment where I was done. I thought it was over, but I managed to make a bunch of wards for Abraxia and a bunch of wards for one of my last Ogroids. So there's still a fight. It's like, we're still in this game. We haven't died. We're alive on a wound, and then it means we can attack back. And then the gods were like, no, but you're not going to hit with any of your attacks, even though you got strike last on this blob unit I've chosen. You're going to miss everything. So it was painful, because I thought I had a chance to swing it back, but no. And I didn't get to kill Be'lakor. Turn 5 was like, just pivot our strategy. We're going to try and kill Be'lakor. That's all we're going to try and do. And I couldn't do that, because I was really stuck, because my battle tactics, to keep it simple, were Master of the Paths and Restless Energy. But I think, especially if I found out in this particular game, was Carlos was very smart, and he only had one character. He had Be'lakor and a Chaos Lord on mount. So I'm sending Eternus running around the board trying to catch up with his Lord on mount to kill him, so I can start going through the secondaries. I couldn't make a save. I couldn't make a charge. Charges, no, not making any charges today. D6 charge doesn't matter. You're not going to make it with a spell. That's not a passive ability or cheat. I was just unable to do it. So the dice were very much not in my favor, but it's a really fun game, and his army was really nicely painted. It was really good to play against someone who knows their slaves to darkness just as much as I do. And it was a good game, but he did smash me by the end.
Jim, what was the final score?
Doesn't matter what the final score was, Phil. No, it was rough. From what I've got in the app, which may or may not be what was finally put in the system, because it might have been slightly higher for Carlos, but it was 67-30. I did not do well.
That's fair. Well, I mean, it sounded like it was a good game for both of you. Nice. Yeah, my game was also against the Slave to Darkness. It was a guy called Simon. He had 2 big blocks of Chaos Warriors, the regular ones. I think that was 2 units of 20. Some what are those winged harpies, the Furies, I think they were. The Furies. I had a unit of those which were really tricksy because they can fall back in combat. A kind of Chaos Champion that could turn into a Demon Prince, a winged Demon Prince that once he died, the Chaos Champion could turn into Abraxia, 3 Ogroids, but like the standard version where it's like a unit of 3 plus the champion, which were quite tough. And then a big block of Chaos Chosen that were up in the Silver Tower. So they were basically, he had the Gaunt Summoner as well, and basically used the Gaunt Summoner's ability to effectively deep strike them 7 inches away from my models, which was tough to deal with. Basically, yeah, I had Master the Path, which is the first one is Kill a Hero, and then it's like have more things in neutral territory than not. And then the last one no one cares about because you never do it. And then Attune to Gyran, which is have 2 units in the center, which is why I took the Chain Rasps, because they get their free scout move, so I can get onto that center without having to do any run rolls. And then the second one from that is Fall Back and Charge, which works really well for Deathstalkers because I get 1 unit that can fall back and charge without taking damage. And then after that again is corners, which you don't really ever care about really. But yeah, this game's good. Simon readily admitted he wasn't an experienced AOS player. I think this was his like 4th ever game of this edition. I think he might have played a bit of first ed AOS. I think he was another returning AOS player, but a lot of his mates were much more competitive minded and in the jerseys, but he was a bit more casual, and yeah, readily admitted he wasn't as experienced. So yeah, he took the first turn, shuffled some stuff up, but that was sort of it. Actually, no, he did manage to move his Gaunt Summoner up and then charged me with his Chosen that he had dropped down. So that was the big thing that I had to deal with in my turn. So that was a bit tough, but I did eventually deal with them. I think they basically killed my Mongol and my Craven Flame Guard, because Craven Flame Guard seemed to be the first thing that died in most of my games, but the King and the Spirit Host and the Lord Executioner eventually dealt with. Then I had my Hex Wraiths charge up the left-hand side to deal with his other block of warriors. Meanwhile, the Furies were sort of there getting in the way and then constantly falling back. There's one point in the game where I really wanted to stick my Spirit Host into combat, but basically had to go off and deal with like 2 remaining Furies, because if not, he would use those to just jump on my objectives in his turn. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to have to deal with them, even though it's a bit overkill, but just needed to be done and dealt with. I scored quite well. Again, it was another slow game. We only got to turn 3, but I scored really big in my sort of final turn, because I got max points on objectives. So I got 10 for that. And then I also got my 2 second lots of secondaries. So I got another 10 for that. So it looked like I was coming from behind, but actually looking at the tabletop app, I was actually scoring more on the primaries as well for most of the game. So it ended up being a 46 to me, and then 28 to Simon. So it was a win for me. Yeah, it was a fun game. He did get to turn his champion into a demon, but it was sort of so far out at that point. And also, I think thankfully, one of his blocks of Chaos Warriors hadn't really gotten that stuck in. It sort of got diverted and sort of pivoted off in one direction, so I didn't have to worry about it. So I think he would have been keen to have played a few more turns, but we just ran out of time, sadly, which it seemed to be a bit of a trend for my games. And I'm convinced it wasn't me, even though I know Richie would disagree.
What are you talking about? Could be any.
Could be anyone. Could be anyone. I mean, I think some of the players that I played with also were a bit on the slow side, and we both had a lot of models. And in pretty much all our games, there was like combat from turn 1, which massively slowed bits down for us, or like we were looking up certain rules and things like that. But yeah, that was game 2. There was still game 3 to go on Saturday. So yeah, Tim, how was your third and final game of Saturday?
Wow. My third and final game was probably against my most toughest opponent ever, who was running the most gorgeous army ever. It was you, Phil.
Oh, it was me. Yay. So yeah, I guess we can both equally talk about it. So we've talked about the lists. How do you think? Actually, before I do that, let's talk about the mission, which I think was Roiling Roots, which is score if you hold at least one objective, score points for controlling a pair of objectives, and then score if you control more objectives than your opponent. And then this is in terms of a twist, which was actually quite an interesting one. You can select a pair as the underdog and give it strike last, which I always find is not that useful to the underdog, because often you're on those objectives as much as your opponent. It's only useful if your opponent's on the objectives so much that you can get in combat with them and not be on the objectives, which doesn't feel like it happens all that often, personally. But yeah, we had played obviously on Friday, so we already knew what each other's armies did, which I guess was a little bit helpful for both of us. But yeah, what were your highlights from the game?
Basically, yeah, I tried to enact what we spoke about earlier in the day, where I had my 2 big guys in the middle and then screening them out. And I knew exactly what was coming my way, which was I just had to try and outlast you to score enough points, because I haven't got the damage to delete all your units. I just don't make the DPS check on your army, especially with like an all demon list as well. If I took more of a mortal list, I don't think I'd have so much of a problem. That's just because I think the damage output is more in the mortal side of things and the combinations you could do with them. But I felt like I held my own pretty well. I don't think I played it particularly badly. I just think you have the greater damage output.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a huge amount of damage output, but I've got... so I've got the King and the Executioner, which and then Reichenor are like my units that have damage 2 or damage 3. The Mongol, which is the Magcrush Gargant, is so swingy. I think once or twice across all my games, I rolled incredibly well and like managed to do like 5 or 6 damage in combat, but often it's just missing a lot of time. The main thing that the Magcrush Gargant's good at is it's got control 10. So if you can just get it on an objective, or you use a power through on it to get on an objective, you can just, it's basically 12 health that your opponent's got to get through to kill it, basically, even though it's not doing that much in damage.
Well,
if I remember rightly,
I was going to say, you got to remember though, with your big units, you have quite a large footprint as well. So for me to do power through where I have such a small movement range, of like 6 inches, but a big base, I couldn't really
Yeah.
power through to much of an advantage or like get to the other side to try and waddle over to like a back objective to even up the scores. Also, like your hex race, obviously you get a +1 damage on the charge.
On the charge, yeah, that's true. Same with Reikenor. So they're both quite good on the charge if I can get the charge off, which doesn't always happen, unfortunately.
No,
yeah,
but it's
they
more than
can be
likely.
high damage.
Yeah, against me, it's more than likely because you got
True.
the greater move. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah, if I remember rightly, I used my chain rasps as like a bit of a screen because you got the first turn, so you moved stuff up. Did I countercharge to deny you? Oh, I
No,
used
that was in our first game.
Yeah, in the second one, I think I used. I stuck down a nexus of grief in the middle to try and just sort of screen out the center. So if you were within 3 inches, you sort of had to go around to my side, and therefore I could hopefully countercharge you, which is what I think I did. But then I think you sort of dealt with it basically, and it was a bit like, and it meant actually you could just charge the faction train as well, so you could sort of move up quite easily. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't have done that afterwards in hindsight. But yeah, you had your great unclean one and your like flying bugs, which were like the two big things to deal with. And then at one point you, I think, retreated with your bugs a little bit, which meant I could sort of surround the great unclean one a bit more. And then once I dealt with him, I could then sort of try and deal with Rotigus, because Rotigus was the bane of my weekend. In our games, because he has a spell which can switch off heal abilities within 18 inches.
I know, it's great.
Which is basically the entire table when he's positioned in the middle. And obviously that switches off my Nexus of Griefs from healing. It stops me from using my Lord Executioner's enhancement, where he can also heal 3 units, and also stops me from doing rally. The one thing I actually do like about the Nighthaunt in this codex, this battle tome, is that they have a lot more heal mechanics, and actually half of that is mostly due to faction terrain, which came out just prior. But in the previous battle tome, they almost had no heal mechanics, and they were like the only death army to have no recursion whatsoever. So I'm glad that they have a bit more of that to sort of tech into, which is cool. And that's also one of the reasons why I took the chain rasps, because they're 1 wound models, whereas all the others are mostly 2. So when you're on with D3, if you've got a 2 wound model, you're only healing 1 person, whereas at least this time I can be bringing back 3 models. So actually the chain rasps, which are meta wise some of the considered the worst unit in the game, I actually really liked. I thought they were very good and useful. But yeah, it was quite a close game, or it was a good game. Ended up being 45 to me, and we did complete all our turns, although I think we maybe got to turn 3 and then just talked out the last 2 turns, I think, because it was a bit of a foregone conclusion at that point. I'm trying to think, because I killed Rotigus as well, didn't I? And I can't remember if I killed the Nurglings, but I was definitely in combat with them with the king.
You were quite close. The Nurglings were chipping off your Mongol.
Oh, right, yeah. I'm just having a look through the photos.
That's what it's like, the Plague Bearers.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, the last photo was the king and the spirit host in combat with them afterwards. Oh, you still had the your jaws of what were they called?
My Ravenous Jaws.
Ravenous Jaws, yeah, which was a very cool conversion.
Thank you.
They were still on the table at that point. So yeah, that was a good game. Oh, and I've also got a photo of you rolling 2d6 for your charge, and you rolled a 12. So it's like, oh yeah, okay, you're definitely getting him in, because it was quite a long charge. I think you needed like a 9 or a 10 or something, and it's like you rolled that, and I was like, okay, of course you did.
ABC, man, ABC.
Your Chessex dice that you have rolled incredibly well. Definitely in our first game, in our test game, but even in our second game, I think you just do 5s and 6s constantly.
Do you know what's really funny is that like only rolls well against you.
Oh, okay, and no one else. That's fine. I mean, to be fair, I've had quite a few games, especially towards the end, where my dice rolls were just abysmal, and it's like no matter what I rolled, it was 1s and 2s just constantly. So it swings and roundabouts, I guess. So yeah, that was Saturday. So what was your final score for Saturday, Tim? In terms of wins and losses?
I was like 0-3. I'd lost all my games on Saturday.
3 losses. And then Richie, how are you doing? You need to unmute yourself, Richie. Oh, I still can't hear you.
Using the wrong microphone for this entire podcast, so I sound terrible. I've got my good microphone, which is like here, but I'm not using that one. It's using this one, which is usually just here for my mic monitoring. So much for tech things. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about my game 3 on the weekend, which was my first time playing against the delights that is the current iteration of Sylvaneth.
No, hold on, Richie. Before we get into that, what was your wins for the Saturday?
Saturday, well, at this point, I'm one win, one loss. We haven't talked about my third game.
Of course, sorry, but yeah, you are. Sorry, forgive me. You are correct.
For you, it was all over. You and Tim had your game.
Because I was doing it in the order of it's Tim, it's you, then me. But obviously, me and Tim did it together. So yeah, tell us about your game 3. Sorry, Richard.
So my game 3 was, before I was so rudely interrupted, was against the delights that is the current iteration of Sylvaneth, which can best be described as an incredibly large amount of complicated jank. Which is very cool and very interesting. It's like there's just trees popping up everywhere and spells coming out of everywhere. People charging out of trees and attacking out of trees. And all the buffs and debuffs you can imagine coming at you, and then 2 reinforced tree people with these like scythes. So if you charge them, you're in trouble. But if you don't charge them, you're in trouble. So it's a very interesting list to play against. I was against a chap called Matthew. He had a really cool painted Sylvaneth army. He had 2 units of the reinforced scythe wielding things, the big trees. They're not the tree men. They're the little tree men. The Kern of Hunters. The Kern of Hunter things.
Okay.
So 2 of those. He had a bunch of things. He didn't have a Durthu, which is a shame because I would have liked to kill the Durthu. He did have the big Kern of Hunter riding a beetle. Kerfalos, I think his name is. He had that, which scared me. Belfalos, there you go.
That was a new one, wasn't it?
Relatively new. It's been out. It's not. There is a new thing which came out this year. It's like a wizard thing, smaller thing. But Belfalos came out like a year or so ago. He's on a big beetle. I did him. I did him. I was concerned about him, so I smacked him with one of my Ogroids, took him out. But he also had the scary Dreicher Hamadvaya lady, who is awful. She's a horrible elf thing that just throws mortal wounds out of you and charges out of trees. Scary as him. He had the flute-blowing wizard thing, all these weird things and teleporting. Fortunately, spoilers, I lost. But I was trying to play it as well as I could. In that one thing I do know is that an Ogroid Myrmidon is a really cool thing to sit on an objective. So a lot of my army was quite spread out because I just had Ogroids sitting on objectives, waiting for him to try and charge me. Because if he was going to charge onto one of my Ogroids, he would probably not make the full charge, and then he wouldn't kill the Ogroid, and I'd smack his unit. And he didn't, so he didn't charge me. So I was kind of staying in it in terms of primaries. Secondaries was a bit tricky for taking the objectives out on his home plate. I was able to, at one point, nearly turn the tide with Eternus dying and then coming back immediately, because that's one of Eternus' gimmicks. He can just come back on an 8+ on 2d6 in any turn. And he did. Immediately after he died, he came back, and I'm like, I want to sit him in your deployment zone, mate. Deal with this. And he decided to deal with that by charging him with Dreicher Hamadvaya. Because you can do that. Because she can just appear from anywhere and charge out of trees, which is annoying. And I nearly survived. This close. I got her down to 1 wound left. She got me down to 1 wound left, and I was like, it's fine, never mind. He's like, I'm going to power through you. I'm like, curses. No. It was annoying because he charged with Dreicher, and he's like, I'm going to all-out defense. And one of Eternus' abilities is on a 5-up, you can't use a command, and you still spend it. So she wasn't able to get any bonuses to her defense, so I was able to smack her really hard. Got down to 1 wound left. Very annoying, because then she got me down to 1 wound left and power through, and it's like, well, on a 5-up you don't, and I didn't want a 5-up that time. But that would have changed the game, because then I would have kept the objective. And it would have been more interesting. But instead, it was a very hard-fought game. The final score was 55-65 to Matt. And it was very hard going up against Sylvaneth. I honestly, they're not fun. They've just got a lot of shenanigans overlapping at the same sort of time, which is weird to play against. But I think I did all right, because a lot of their stuff still involves getting in and hitting stuff and being good in combat. So it was a very close game, but I did lose. So at the end of day 1, I was 1 win and 2 losses. Okay, very good. 1 win, 2 loss. Tim, you were 3 losses, and I was 2 wins, 1 loss. Then game 4, which was the first game of Sunday, was Cyclic Shifts, which, if I can find it, that's here. It's basically scoring 5 points if you control 1 objective, 3 points for 2 or more objectives, and then 2 victory points if you control more objectives than your opponent. And basically, you can also, as the underdog, pick a pair of objectives to be the target, and basically they can't be controlled, so you can switch them off, which was really useful. Certainly in my game, it helped. Tim, how did you get on in your game 4?
So in my game 4, I actually ended up playing against Stu Hilton, which Richie had played on the Saturday against his lovely Iron Jaw list. And yeah, it was beautifully painted.
Was that the one that also got in the cabinet?
No, he didn't get in the cabinet, which was actually a bit of a surprise to me because the freehand on there of like some checkered freehand and like the tribal patterns, and the blue and orange is like a nice contrasty striking scheme as well.
Yeah, I think Stu should have been in there rather than the other Iron Jaws that was in the cabinet. That's me throwing some shade. Assuming that anyone's listening.
Richie. But yeah, it's a lovely army. Stu's a painter, and he's a great painter as well. But yeah, just to quickly go through his list, he had a Kragnos, 2 big brutes, like Richie said, Zogrok, Weird Boy Shaman, Scourge Garam, Weird Boy Wreckers, 2 units of them, a War Chanter, and the big pig, Mega Gargant Gouger. Surprise, surprise. I didn't change my tactics of having the 2 big guys in the middle. And then I had my 2 plague bearers on the left. He had deployed his big pig on the left as he was facing me. 2 big blobs of brutes in the middle, with like his shaman, the Kragnos, and the War Chanter, and Zogrok all in the middle. And then on either side was like his boys, weird brute wreckers. And it was kind of like just a massive smash up in the middle, really. He gave me the first turn at the start of the battle because everything was just clumped up in the middle. I was like, haha, Teleban Nurgle, you shall be diseased. And then I shall just spread this to everyone. And then everyone would just take mortal wounds. So because I was running Attuned Gyran and Master of the Pass, my objective was always to try and get the first turn anyway, to get Seasoned Centrifuge to like capture the middle, and then just go from there. I knew Kragnos hurts, so especially if he gets the charge off, unless he rolls a 7, the stories go. So I just threw my plague drones up, followed by my big boys. The plague bearers were on the left, my Nurglings were on the right, just sitting on an objective, and I didn't expect much from them. And yeah, the way the terrain was set out, there were 2 buildings which really hampered how many brutes he could get into my army. One set of brutes went off to like the left-hand side to deal with the 2 units of plague bearers, as well as like the big pig, and that was just like a traffic jam for most of the game. And then in the middle, Kragnos charged into my plague drones, but I also got off my ravenous jaws. So by the time he got rid of the plague drones, I just threw my ravenous jaws into him, which I didn't really care about anyway, which was like another roadblock, which gave me time to accumulate some points, move Roticus up with my Great Unclean One. And once he got rid of the jaws, I just threw Roticus into him so he couldn't get the charge off on me. And he did kill Roticus, but by that time he had taken so much damage that I got my Great Unclean One into him. I should say that the 1 block of brutes went into my Great Unclean One, and the Great Unclean One like weathered the damage and then just took out all 10 of them eventually over a couple of turns, which was great. Yeah, it was great. Actually, it might have been the other way around. Might have been Roticus that got rid of the brutes and the Great Unclean One going into Kragnos. Anyway, basically, the big guys got rid of the big blob of brutes. And then by that time, Kragnos had taken a lot of damage. He got rid of one of the big guys. The other big guy, Great Unclean One, I'm pretty sure it was the Guo, just ran into him, finished him off. And then it was just like a case of like trying to use the last Guo, or use Guo to try and clean up the other brutes, while I brought back some plague drones to fly off and try and capture corners and other objectives and stuff. So at the end of that game, it was a win. I got my first win of the weekend.
Nice.
And it was like 66-47. So
pretty good.
Yeah, it was it was a good game. It was a really good game. And he was a great guy to play against as well. So
Richie, how did you do in yours?
Well, I thought I had my taste of shenanigans and complicated rules, jank nonsense, but I was in for more of a surprise, because as we rocked up on Sunday, I got to play the other competitor, at least one of the others from La Campania from Barcelona. I got to play against Miguel, who had the new Disciples of Zinch. It was rocking new Disciples of Zinch with some really, really pretty, really bright, vibrant minis with lots of LEDs all over them, which was an acquired taste of some. I thought it was cool. But facing against them for the first time was a lot of, you can do what now? And you do,
Right.
and how does that work? If you haven't played against Disciples of Zenith before, the new one, they're quite interesting because there are lots of, here is a unit, it's here on your turn. You can just just teleport and swap them with different units. That's kind of like their gimmick. That because there's lots of swapping between different planes of reality. So one turn will have like a tanky unit that they'll just leave on there and just move blocking you on your turn, and then in their turn they'll swap it out and replace it with a really hard hitting melee unit. They've only got usually maybe 75% approximately of their units on the board because they have to put it into reserves when they do that. But it's very cool how it works. It's annoying because you get hit by a lot, and they've got lots of spells that do loads of damage. I definitely made a big error in just not just running up into him and smacking him as quickly as I could.
Right.
I played it a little too cautiously and then lost at least half my. I think my army was half injured before I even got into combat because of all these spells that do. It'll say, I'll summon this thing. I'll summon this endless spell, and because he had Kairos, the Fate Weaver, he basically just summons spells because you can't stop him. It's I'm just gonna roll 2 dice and I will double the highest number, add 2 to it. So they okay, I guess you're casting whatever spell you wanted to cast every turn. Fine, okay. So they say, I'll just drop this endless spell here, which used to be rubbish, and now just does D3 mortal wounds against everybody within range of it. So I was okay, I'm getting smacked about a lot. So it was very tough. I definitely, what did I do in this one? Ultimately, I lost quite. I did better than I did. I got more points than I did against Chaos, but I did get basically smashed up a lot. My goal by the end of it was I'm going to kill Kairos. And me was you can't kill Kairos. I'm I can kill Kairos. I can take him down. Not if you keep teleporting him out of the way, but I'm going to get him. I'll catch him. I did eventually catch him using Zench's own tricks against them. I was able to bring in. It was literally in the last turn that Eternus finally turned up, so I dropped him behind Kairos, so then he couldn't use it. And then every time I tried to use a command, I was no, you don't, not today. No redeploys you today. No all-out defense you today. And one of my Ogroids, I gave Mark of Zench to, so he could do a short range teleport, which I rolled really high for. So I got to get behind Kairos as well. So basically behind this big long wall of bodies in front of Kairos, and in the last one I was able to get behind that and then just charge him, and then with the gods willing the Fate Weaver fell. I lost the game, but I did kill Kairos' Fate Weaver, which made me feel a lot better. If anything, the thing I learned was I just need to get in harder and smack the Zench boys harder earlier, because they've got lots of shenanigans and teleporting around and some very hard hitting spells. Once you get into them, if you get into them in the right fashion, they're not that scary, but they can hit very hard as well because they've got these Zangors, and I don't care for Zangors. Don't care who knows it. I think they're silly. They're okay. I don't mind them in the AOS, but when they've been in 40k, I'm what are they doing? But they've got the Zangors with big sticks on discs. They hit like a truck. They are really annoying. They'll just say, that's a big unit you've got there. We'll kill that. I'm well, it's Abraxia. You're not gonna. Oh, you did kill Abraxia. Fair enough. So that was a tough game. Very pretty army, and I did get a dice from him of the company, which I then used in later games to roll 1s for me.
Nice. I did that. Got given a dice in my last game, and I'll talk about that when we get to it. But yeah, well done, Richie.
Well done. I lost, Phil.
Well done for killing Kairos.
Yeah.
And gaining a dice.
Moral victory.
Well worth it. Exactly. Everyone likes a moral victory of some kind. Yeah, my game was against a lovely chap called Calvin. It was quite a fun game. It was another Magotkin of Nurgle army. It's a very different list from yours, Tim. He had a Winged Demon Prince. He had the big champion from Darkwater, whose name I can't remember. The guy with the big sword, like the mini.
I know the one you mean.
Great Unclean one that isn't him. Those two were on one side, on my left-hand side, on one flank. Then in the middle, he had a reinforced unit of, I assume it's 20 rot swords. It's like the biggest blob you've ever seen. Rotagus, Baladama, who I think is the wizard witch from Darkwater, and then another reinforced unit of, it sort of looks like 12 or so, maybe it's 10 Blight Kings. Maybe there's an extra champion in there as well, I think, which is why there's an extra model. Yeah, in terms of layout, I did pretty much the same thing in every game, so it just seemed quite consistent. On the left-hand side, I had my 10 Hex Wraiths with the Knight of Shroud on steeds, because they combo together, because once he fights, they can fight and get +1 to hit. Normally next to them, I have Reikenor and the Dreadblade Harrows. In the middle, I've got my 2 units of Chain Gas to sort of go up to get my tune to go around. Behind them, normally the Executioner with some Spirit Hosts. Then on the furthest flank on the right-hand side is the Mongol, holding up that side, and then sort of between them and the centre is the King and the Craven Throne Guard, along with another unit of Spirit Host. So that was pretty much my layout I did in all of them. This game, he gave me the first turn, whereas I think I've been made to go second in most of the others. And I sort of went up to try and get the center. Let me just double check that I did actually get it. Yeah, I got a tune to go around turn one, but I sort of did it as defensively as possible because I was worried about a big unit of rot swords. I basically played a game of hide and seek with them because as soon as they came towards me as the game went on, I kept moving the chain gasps back down to chain rasps back down to try and avoid the rot swords. But on the left hand side, I basically charged up the board, the Hex Wraiths and the Knight of Shrouds to try and deal with the Demon Prince. I also teleported over the Dreadblade Harrows. Knight of Shrouds failed his charge because I needed like a 10. The Hex Wraiths failed their charge. I re-rolled it because they also needed a 9 or a 10. I re-rolled it. They failed. The Dreadblade Harrows needed a 9 inches, which I did finally roll. So they technically got in, but when I measured it, it didn't look like if I was going base to base with the Demon Prince, I could be out of combat with the other guy. I think the lesson there, because I think Calvin did it to me later on, was that you would move to half an inch away, still be in combat, but probably out of range of the other guy for the activation, which maybe I should have done. And in hindsight, afterwards, he basically said, "Yeah, you should have charged in there because it would have tied them up." And I was like, I'd be better off fighting them all at the same time. So I decided not to declare the charge in the end. Or take the charge, and instead they swung into me in his turn. And basically I thought, I'll be able to deal with them. It's like a Demon Prince. It shouldn't be that difficult. It literally took me like 3 or 4 turns to kill it. It took forever. It always, I think it was like on a 3 up or 2 up, got fight first. So that went off most turns except in one. So basically those 2 characters minced my Hex Wraiths, and the Knight of Shrouds died first, then the Hex Wraith died over like 2 turns, and then the Dreadblade Harrows fell back. And in fact, they teleported onto one of his objectives in one of the later turns, and then the Demon Prince charged after it. Actually, yeah, maybe I didn't kill the Demon Prince in the end. So, yeah, I didn't kill either of them. I sort of weakened him down, but then he managed to heal him a little bit. And then he chased down my Dreadblade Harrows and killed them. Meanwhile, the other guy went around to try and steal my home objective, because then I think at that point the Chain Rasps had fallen back onto that. So he was fighting them. And at that point, I was the underdog, so I switched off the 2 middle objectives. So his home objective and my home objective, I switched off. So even though he was on it, he wasn't scoring, which is why I then teleported up on the left-hand side to get his other objective. And then on the right-hand side, I had to deal with Rotigus and the Blight Kings. The Blight Kings I eventually did kill, but it took a while with the Mongol and the King and the Executioner. Then there was Rotigus to deal with, and I was like, okay, cool, it's my turn. I think at this point I maybe took the double turn because I sort of needed. No, I couldn't have taken double because I went first. Basically, it was my turn. I basically had to charge in the King, Giant, Kurdos, Reikenor, and the Executioner. And every single, and then he redeployed, I think like 4 or 5 inches away. He got quite a good roll. And then I failed all but 1 charge. So only Kurdos the King got into combat. And annoyingly, next to Rotigus was another champion of his. So I was like, okay, fine, I've got to go into combat with both of them based on positioning. And I think I maybe got the Spirit Host in as well with him, but all the other major characters had fallen. My one big turn to try and kill Rotigus completely fluffed it. So instead I ended up swinging into the other guy to finish him off, because I was like, I'm not going to do much damage on Rotigus. So Rotigus survived, and then eventually his big scary block of rot swords pivoted across, rather than going to that central objective, went into basically the Executioner, my chain gasps Reikenor, and he sort of wipes them all out over a couple of turns. So yeah, I think by the end of turn 3, that was when sort of time ended, but because I basically had one unit left, we sort of quickly played through the next turn and talked through the last turn. So by turn 3, it was 39 to me, 43 to him, and then we talked out and played very quickly the last 2 turns. So it was 39-63 to him, because I think basically I was like, just do this combat here, and then you've tabled me, and then you can do your secondaries and score you the points, because that seemed really fair, rather than just calling it like I had in the other games. But it was a really fun game. It was, incredibly difficult to deal with Rotigus switching off all my healing mechanics, basically, which really didn't help. And potentially not charging in my Dreadblade Harrows turn 1 might have made a real difference, because even though they might not have killed him, it would have like forced him to be stuck there, and then I could have maybe got a charge off with my Hex Wraiths and doing the 2 damage on the charge and stuff. So yeah, that was a shame, but it was a really good game, so I didn't mind it too much. And then lastly, we've got game 5, which was Linked Ley Lines. So this one has some interesting scoring mechanics, because you've got sort of 3 objectives going across the middle and then 2 going up either side of that central objective. So you got a 3 and a 3 and across a sort of pattern. So you score basically 3 points for scoring 1 objective, 3 points for scoring 2 or more, 2 victory points if you control any pairs of objectives, and then 2 victory points if you control all of the objectives on a linked ley line, which is in that kind of cross thing. And then also the twists are completely pointless, because they're just bonuses to manifestations, basically. Tim, for your final game, tell us how you got on.
So for my final game, I played against a chap called Joshua James, and he was running the Hellsmiths of Hashut, something that I haven't faced since our doubles game, actually. So I kind of had an indication of how they were going to play and what they get up to. So I wasn't actually too concerned with them, to be honest, because I was under the impression that, well, they're going to hurt, so I might as well just charge into them and smash them as quickly as I can to try and limit the damage that they output. So to go over his list, he was running Uruk Tar, some Bull Centaurs, the Infernal cohort with Hashut Spears. They were reinforced. And then in another regiment, he had like a Demon Smith, and then he had the Dominator engine with Bane Maces, and then the Dominator engine with Immolator Cannons. And then in another regiment, he had an Ashen Elder, some Hobgrots, and the Smelly cohort, Smelly Infernal cohort with Hashut Blades and a War Despot. It was an interesting game because he threw up his Bull Centaurs as he should, because they hit hard and they do quite a lot of damage on the charge as well. And they smashed into my plague drones. Again, it was another case of, well, my plague drones, I don't really care if they live or die. They're just there to act as a roadblock. And then again, I also got off my primal spells to try and chip off damage where I could, although only the Jaws got into combat. Like the Burning Head just sat there and didn't really do anything, unfortunately. But he ended up charging my Rotigus and Great Unclean One with his Dominator engines, and they managed to weather the storm and just chip away at them and take them out. Again, the Plague Bearers just sat on objectives and weathered some of the storm from the Bull Centaurs as well, to tie them up, to make sure that they can run around and do a lot of damage elsewhere. And by the time I gotten rid of the Dominator engines, I managed to get my Rotigus over to the left into them to chip them away. But the key defining moment was actually because I had more drops. I had the reroll, and so he did actually double. He did have the opportunity to double me for the turn, but I re-rolled the initiative to take the turn back so that he couldn't double me, which is probably a bit of a feel bad, because I was probably winning by quite a few points at that moment of the game. But similarly, I just won a game and I was like, I want to win 2 games. I saw blood, Phil. I saw blood in the water, and I was like, I'm not walking away with this with just 1 win. I'm going to get 2 wins, and I will bath myself in his tears.
Smash him.
I will smash, and I will smash good. So yeah, so really it was just weathering the storm with my other units and then throwing my big guys into them and then doing some recursion to chip those damaging units away. The mortal wound was obviously popping off every turn, and I think this was the only game that I actually managed to get my disease on every unit. So that also meant I was getting the initial mortal wound, and then I got to roll my D3 as well.
Because you get D3 +1 when every unit in your army is diseased. So I had that against me with Calvin. Calvin's game, like halfway through, he's like, I'm doing D3 +1 now. And I'm like, you're what now?
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, all your stuff's diseased now, so I'm doing extra damage.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. Because that again is like, along with Rotigus, switching off on my heals, the disease mechanic, like it's so many mortal wounds. Even if I was healing, you can disease more than I can heal. And the order in which you disease is quite frustrating, because when it's your turn, you get to do it first and then I get to do my stuff. But even when it's my turn, it's like, cool, I use my Nexus to heal, move to some disease tokens, but then you'll immediately put them back on the units to the point where it's pointless. And I think actually Catherine was saying, because I think when we played, you said I could all units or disease, or was that wrong? But I think when I played Gavin, he was like, oh no, you have to remove the disease first. So I don't know if that was a rule he was getting wrong, or it was a change in the new battle time.
I would say he probably had it right. You have to heal disease first, and then
sort of makes sense. But it's like, okay, cool, I'll just take it off, and then he's like, yeah, I'm putting it back on and doing mortal wounds, and it's like, oh, okay, there's nothing I can do about this. So yeah, that's quite a sort of unfun mechanic to be on the receiving end. But then I'm sure you'd say that about a bunch of my stuff, so it's fine.
This is also true. But yeah, the games I've lost is where I haven't been able to get my disease off, or people have been healing it effectively. So I guess that's more of a lesson for me, is to really try and remember my mechanics of like trying to disease everything. Yeah, of like my spells were always like Fleshy Abundance, give something minus, will give like a Great Unclean one -1 to wound, and then try and do Rotigus' spell, and then try and get the Emerald Lifeswarm on, and then try and get the Ravenous Jaws, and do all these shenanigans was pretty much the majority of my weekend. But on Sunday, I actually made use of like Plague Wind, which was to disease a unit, and then when a unit dies, if there's another enemy unit within 9 inches of it on like a 4 up.
I think it's a 4 up.
Yeah, 4 up, you can disease that unit, which is like super handy. So at the end of my final game, I took the win. Yeah.
Nice.
And I took it at 78-23. So I am sorry, Josh, that I gave you a bad game.
Nice. Do you have any like learnings? Obviously, you briefly mentioned it, but do you have any other learnings of like your army or your play style, or how you'd have done the missions differently, or would do them differently in a future game?
Yeah. So the one key thing that changed in the book was, I can't remember if it was Sloppy Bar Viper or Spoilpot Scrivener, but basically one of the hero abilities was to give a unit of Plague Bearers or Demons an extra attack. Now you have to get your Poxbringer into combat and then select a Plague Bearer unit in combat range of him. They get strike first. Sorry, no, they get to attack at the same time or after the Poxbringer's attacked, but he gives them the +1 to attack now, which is a mechanic I'm aware of, but it's not something I've actually played with before. So I need to get better at synergizing that combo. Equally, as much as Richie hates it, I would actually probably just take one big block of Plague Bearers and maybe just more Plague Drones just to really nail down an objective. But it's the build and paint sort of meta of the hobby, right? You only have so much time to paint and build stuff, and I had already painted up like the Rotigus, 3 Plague Drones and a unit of Plague Bearers and the endless spells. Like there's no way I could do any more. I am interested in more Plague Drones, but I didn't actually enjoy painting them. I'm not sure if I'll do that, but I would like to mix in some Beasts of Nurgle for like the mortal wound smash. But yeah, I think in whole, like towards the end of the weekend, I was getting better at playing the army, and I was understanding more of its like strengths and weaknesses. So,
that's good. Cool. Richie, your fifth and final game. How'd you get on? You're muted again, Richie.
Are you sure?
That's it. You're back.
I sound like I'm back. Okay, so my final game of the weekend was against... Who was it against? It was against James, according to the synopsis, unknown faction. But I can distinctly remember that he was a faction because I took pictures of... Wait, I need to remember now. What he was. What was in my last game? Yes, he was Ghost. He was the Ghosties. He was Nighthaunt. He was playing Nighthaunt. He had large reinforced units of Ghosties, which are very hard to kill. And he had the little houses, the little sheds that he teleports at the board. And it was game 5, so I was just like, what the hell? I'm 3-1. Let's just have a bit of fun. And he was also 3-1, but he was like, how these sheds are rubbish. Like, these sheds are really annoying. My buddy Phil uses these, and I hate them. So I did try to kill the sheds. He was rocking. I said 3 big units of ghosts with swords. One of them was like better at hitting.
It played Geists, I think, of the sword ones.
So he had 2 that were good, and 1 that was slightly better, but they were both of 20. He had a coach. The guy ran black coach. He had a guy on half a boat that was flying around.
I wrote the Drowner.
Yeah, as well. It was these lots of big units, and I kind of he let me go first, and I was like, I'm just coming for a fight. I was moving my entire army just up the board, and then he was like, I'm going in for the fight, and he charged into me to try and kill Abraxia using the mighty black coach, which I love you. The black coach doesn't die. If the dice are on your side, it just won't die. And so he nearly did kill Abraxia. Basically, my opponent James kept making jokes that all my units be alive on 1 wound, because it did happen far too many times. For it to the extent where I'm like, well, this is a bit embarrassing now, because like, I'm alive on a wound, because I'm rolling in full vision. He's like, how many wounds left? I'm just alive on 1 wound. The amount of times Abraxia was dropped to 1 wound just to heal up again, and then dropped to 1 wound. It was a surprisingly brutal ghosts running into Ogroids and mounted Chaos characters smacking each other for the first few turns. It then got remarkably tactical later on, because he finally summoned his Cron Spine. He was glad it came out, and he was like, I've been waiting all weekend to get this out. And I said, it's out now. I've got a secret. I've got one of these. You're going to miss with every attack. Now you've got it out. Annoyingly, he didn't. He just decided to walk around. Like, his Cron Spine was just moving around, killing my Ogroids one at a time. I'm like, so can you stop doing that? Eventually, I had to banish it. I was like, just clear off, just killing off my army. And then I had to, and then it was the closest game I had of the entire weekend, because the final score, it came down to me to turning one of my sorcerers into a demon prince. But the final score was 66-65.
To you, I'll take it.
That was to me.
Nice.
And it might have been, well, that's what we called it, because the time had gone, and we just gone into at his turn 5. And then the whistle had gone. It's like, wrap up your games as much as you could. And I just did the quick sums, and I was like, okay, I can get to 66 if it was one of the things that, well, if I don't do anything, I'll get 66. So I'll get to 66 points. I might be able to do some other secondaries, but I'm not going to bother. Great game, mate. Let's call it there. And so it was a 66-65. It was a really good game. It was really close. I really enjoyed it. It literally came down to like the final turn and like making charges. Where it's like, I'll make. Like, people say, I can't make that charge. Oh, you did. Oh, and you killed the stuff. So it's a really fun game. I liked it a lot. It was nice to be up against an army that I knew the shenanigans of, because I've played you before, Phil. I know what the ghostly shenanigans is.
Don't charge for Nexuses.
Yep, and it was nice to be playing a ghostly player who's not just constantly complaining about other people's stuff.
Well, I mean, he's a better man than I am. Yeah. That's what I can say. It
was the first time I played against Nighthaunt in the event, and I always feel bad after a bit when I play Nighthaunt, because I'm so used to saying that's 4 wounds at 2 rend, and then it's like, don't care what the rend is on Nighthaunt.
That's fair.
But it was not. It was. It was a fun final game. Essentially a final outing for my Champions of Chaos list, because as much as it's quite fun to run, overall it's not that competitive. And it definitely feels competitive, because if when a little Ogroid smacks you for 30 wounds, it's not very nice. People don't like that.
No, it's a bit unfun, to be fair.
It is a bit unfun, and it goes back to my old psychological thing. People don't mind when big things do lots of damage. But when a little thing does lots of damage, people don't like it as much. But I had fun running this Champions of Chaos list, but I will now retire it and move on to something more practical. It was a fun final game. James had a really cool, not really nicely painted Nighthaunt army, but I ended up at the end of it as a 3-2.
No,
wait, not 3-2, 2-3.
2 and 3.
2 and 3 is I got 2 wins out of it, which I was quite happy with considering how close the games were.
That's true. Yeah, I feel like you normally do like 3 and 2. You've done 4 and 1 before though, haven't you?
I think I've been 4 and 1 once, and I normally end up around 3 and 2.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Well, like not too bad a result, I think, especially considering some of the opponents like you were facing and stuff. So yeah, well done. My game 3 was against a guy called Jack, who works in the skirmish sort of department of Games Workshop. I think he deals with like Underworlds and Warcry and stuff like that. He had an ogre Moor tribe. I think he had a Bloodpout Hunter, which is like the hunter ogre. He also had the Tyrant, and I think the Butcher, and I think the Butcher gives them like pluses to their charge roll, but then the Tyrant gives them advance and charge, something like that, or combination of characters basically do that. He had a unit of 2 wolves, and basically the rest were ogre gluttons, and I think iron guts. So the iron guts I think they're the ones that flat 3 damage. Yeah, he had 2 units of those and 2 massive units of gluttons. And then the big cannon, which is the Iron Blaster, which must have been an enhancement version because it in the app it says it does D3 plus 3 damage, but his was like a flat 5, I think. So he must have buffed that in some way. Yeah, he had the cannon and the man-trapper guy, the hunter on one side, and then it was just a big blob pretty much in the middle. I did my pre-game move, but I basically shuffled my guys forwards a couple of inches, but not too many, because I was like, well, I don't want him charging me. But then he immediately proceeds to do like a 14-inch move across the board, plus a charge, one of which is 3d6. So he gets like 2 or 3 units into combat with them like immediately, because the move is basically straight across the board. And then one of the other judges who was sort of going around watching, who I think is one of the AOS devs, was like, Jack, you're doing your classic turn 1 charge again, are you? And he's like, yes, I am. So he was obviously doing it in pretty much all of his games, because he's also a 2-drop army, so he was clearly always getting off these mad charges, or at least 60-70% of the time. I think little did I know, maybe I should have actually just done my full 6-inch scout move, because what he did with 2 of those units, actually what I did is I countercharged with my Hex Wraiths, because I was like, well, I'll get them in and at least stuff one of them up. But then he activated his once per game ability on 2 of those units to fight twice, striking last with the second one. So what happened then is he proceeded to kill my screens and then pile into my heroes that I thought were safe, and also just murder them as well. And then the horses pretty much got demolished. Not completely that turn, but to the point where they were pointless, I think. So yeah, basically the lesson from my games have been, don't heroically intervene, because it does, or countercharge in AOS terms, because it doesn't really help you out, especially when it's their turn. Well, it only happens on their turn, but basically they get the priority in terms of what to pick. So it's like the thing you countercharge is the thing they're going to just go for first, because it's probably the scariest thing out of your army. I think they also I think got into combat with my Mongol quite quickly and killed him. Annoyingly, I positioned my Craven Throne Guard behind a building in my turn, because I was like, well, he won't be able to move up close enough, so they're in a bad position to shoot, but that's fine because they'd be out of range turn 1 to do their kind of counter shooting. And then he did his big massive move, so I couldn't even fire in his turn because I sort of misplayed where I positioned those guys. So yeah, it quickly turned into a really terrible game for me, despite Jack being a really lovely guy. My dice rolls were terrible. He said several times he was going to buy me new dice. It was that bad. And Jack never did, sadly. So I should have maybe held him to it, but I was like, that's fine. Don't worry. If I remember rightly, the chain gasps, which are the 2 little guys that on a 3-up in combat phase get +1 attack, literally never went off all game, which was probably at least 6 phases. I failed that. I was rolling 1s constantly. And then likewise for my executioner, his -1 attack, never got that off either, because I kept rolling 1s or 2s. So yeah, it was a bit abysmal. It was only like the highlight of the game, which was actually quite fun, was basically pretty much at the very end when I didn't have much left. I had a unit of chain rasps left. that somehow survived the big battering because they were hidden behind a wall, and potentially I just hadn't seen them and I should have removed them earlier. They were there like on turn 4, and I was like, oh, I've got these guys still. What are they doing here? So I teleported them around basically to steal objectives and to make Jack's life a bit of a nuisance. And when he basically max scored every single turn, got all the secondaries, and the last one he was trying to do was the corners because he had mastered the path, so he was trying to do the corners. So he had one ogre running off to one corner, and basically I teleported a unit near him to grab an objective, and then in the second turn was like hunting him down. I also had one of my nexuses over there as well, so I moved that out of the way because he was hiding behind it. So I moved it out of the way so I could charged in with my chain rasps, of which I only had like maybe 4 or 5. I was healing them with the nexuses, and then managed to kill him. And then in the final turn, in turn 5, try to get onto the very last one of his objectives by again teleporting them around because it costs a CP. So I did that to get on his home objective. And then he was going to, I think he was originally just going to redeploy away so I couldn't charge him. But then that was it. He was going to basically just deny me the points. I was like, thanks, Jack. He was basically like, I'm going to redeploy off of the objective, so I'll be out of range. You can't charge me. But then he actually realized that his faction train piece was just behind my guys, so I could have actually just charged that and then repositioned them so I'd have been on the objective. So we decided to have a fight and a showdown in that final turn. And I did manage to I think I failed the charge by like an inch, but he was like, I'll just take it. Let's have the fight, of which I won. And then I got like some, minor pity points for having that one objective. So it was a bit of a whitewash. It was 23 to me, 75 to Jack. And he gave me one of his really good dice rolling Ogre Moor Tribe faction specific dice as a consolation prize. So that was very nice of him. But yeah, it was a good game. I did enjoy it. He was a really lovely chap. It was just a bit of a shame. It was a bit too one-sided in terms of how the game. There was no fight, basically. He completely smashed me, which is a bit unfortunate. But there were some really fun elements to at the end. I forgot to ask Richie about your learning, so I'll ask that in a second. In terms of the ones that I got, I realised using places of power are really useful in your opponent's turn to get a dispel off. I think it was like a few games in and I was like, I should start using this. I was doing that quite consistently. The chain rasps I really liked and enjoyed. I like the fact they're only 1 wound, so I can bring more of them back with the nexuses. I think I probably need to lean more into boring infantry if I want to do Nighthaunt well, I think, because that's how I'm currently doing like a hero hammer version. And I think basically having buffing pieces to buff units that are fighting are probably more efficient than having lots of characters that have like high damage, just because you'll get more wounds and more attacks overall with like a unit that's a similar points to a hero, but obviously maybe have the odd hero. But yeah, it was a good weekend, I thought. Yeah, Richie, did you have any? I guess you said you were going to retire your army, but in terms of overall how you played, was there any like interesting learning points for you?
Most interesting thing I learned was that a lot of the newer battle tomes that have come out get their own special commands, which I wasn't familiar with, because usually you look at your opponent and think, how many CP have they got? Okay, that means they can do a all-out defense, all-out defense attack, or power through, countercharge, that kind of stuff. So you can kind of play with that stuff in mind. But a lot of the newer lists, especially, and I think Disciples Ascension as well, they just have commands that are like, I'm going to give myself fight first, I'm going to give you fight last, which is a bit of a curveball. That is like, oh, wait, you can just do that? There's a lot of new things in newer battle tomes which are very much like traditionally out of sequence abilities that do come out of a bit of left field if you're not familiar with them. Because it's not normal. Well, it's becoming normal. It's definitely not normal for like, oh, you can just give out fight last to be, because I got like spells that can do it. That's like nice, but it's like, okay, I have to cast that spell or you get to deny it. But they've just got like, oh, here's a command point. I'm going to give my units fight first, or I'm going to give you fight last. So that was definitely something against Sylvaneth that was a bit of a, oh dear, that's going to make this very difficult. And I feel that there was something similar for Disciples as well. So yeah, if you're up against, what I learned is if you're coming up against some of the newer battle tomes, do take a closer. Don't just like ask what the units do. Check what the commands they have access to as well, because there's some interesting stuff there that's getting kind of added into the new battle tomes. Yeah. So keep an eye on that.
Mine definitely doesn't have anything like that, so that's good to know. Cool. Let's do a quick wrap up and talk about the end. So on Sunday, Richie, can you stick your camera on if you're able to?
Not really, because I'm lying down.
Fair.
For the benefit of people at home, I'm still recovering from spinal surgery, but I'm doing a fill of solid by showing up for this.
Well, greatly appreciated. You sit back and relax. Yeah. So Sunday, armies got to go into the cabinet. I thought, Tim, you had a good chance of getting in there. I was hopeful I might, because I thought the Mongol was quite a cool looking unit, and a few of the guys came around and asked me about it. So, but neither of us did. Some of the armies were pretty cool though. There was a Cauldron Overlords player that had his boats replaced with sails, basically, so they looked sort of a bit more like kind of classic fantasy flying ships. There's like a classic piece of John Blanche artwork which they look very reminiscent of, so that was very cool. There was did you play the Zinch one, Richie, that had the
I did, yeah,
the LEDs on? There was that guy. There was quite nicely painted Sylvan F1. There was an Orc one, Iron Jaws, that had lots of big pigs, and but like the bases were really high in terms of how they stacked them. I thought that one was quite good. I'm trying to think which was the other one that I voted for. I think it was the Orcs and the Cauldron Overlords, I think, were the two I voted for. So they were quite good. As always, the ones in the cabinet, congrats to them. And then in terms of scoring, so we weren't really expecting to win anything, because I think obviously Dan was with us, but he's not here to join us because he's not allowed on the show. He's too busy being a bigwig at Games Workshop.
He's still banned.
Yeah, he's still banned. So I think he did he do 2 and 3? I can't remember what his final score was.
I feel like it was 3.
Oh, he might have done 3 and 2, actually.
It doesn't matter what he was, he's dead to us.
That is fair. But despite his score, whatever it was a 3 and 2, I think. But he lost. He did well, and then he lost the last 2 or 3 games. I can't remember which. But anyway, he got best in faction for Iron Jaws. Yay him! So he got a little medal to wear. That was very cool. And then the other person that won something was Tim. You came 3rd place in best overall, because you basically got a bunch of. Did you get 4 favorite game and favorite army votes?
I did,
Tim
indeed.
He did a phenomenal job.
You did very well, so well done you. I think I was basically 1 favorite game vote behind you. Otherwise I would have potentially drawn, or I think I still would have lost, because I don't think I had more game points than you. But I was like, I came so close. So well done you coming 3rd. That was very good. You've got a nice bronze trophy.
I did indeed.
That's very cool. And it's got each side is like a pillar that's squared off, and each side's a different greater faction, basically. Well done.
The thing I didn't realize is Dan doesn't have any of these trophies yet. Dan's usually got ones,
because he's got all the 40k ones.
The old
he
ones.
Does, yeah. The only ones of our kind of group who've got a AOS trophy now is Joe and Tim.
Wow, and that's probably all helped from favorite game votes, I think.
Well, that's because it's for being lovely human beings with great.
Well, exactly.
Is what it is.
Yeah. That's true, because I think, where did Joe come? He came 2nd, didn't he? And then got a golden ticket because the 3rd place had won it. And it was a similar thing this time as well. The person that came 2nd got the golden ticket because the 1st place had already won it, basically. So yeah, that was a good, outstanding result, Tim. Well done for being a lovely chap. Well deserved.
Thank you very much. I do try.
I mean, what's important, sorry, just to interrupt you briefly, Tim, is that I think your army is phenomenally painted. And I think what it does show is that while the staff at Games Workshop didn't think you were cabinet worthy, everyone else you played against did, and hats off to you.
That's true. I'm convinced, basically, for the reason why we get marked down slightly is we don't have a load of stuff on our bases. And I don't mean that like sort of cynically, but a lot of the ones in the cabinets have like the floral flower type stuff added to the bases, or some kind of extra details like LEDs or something. Yours is relatively plain. It's just sort of texture paint. Mine is texture paint plus green stuff, cobblestones and graves. It's very sort of boring looking. I think to both our armies, to elevate them, probably need some basing stuff, because I reckon they have some form of criteria that they sort of tick box off, and when it comes to maybe there's a draw of we've got a few contenders, who should it go to, they probably go, well, this person's put more effort in basing,
Mm.
so it goes to them, is my suspicion, but I don't actually know for sure how they go about it.
I think it's different for each judge. Each judge has their own criteria and they make their own shortlist, and then I think they cross correlate their lists to see who is a common denominator between them.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that make it into the cabinet. Like, for example, one person might be looking at bases. Another person might be like, well, I actually quite like a striking scheme. Somebody else might be like, I quite like modification, conversions of an army. So it is hard to say. I always feel that my paint scheme on my Nurglings, on my Nurgle, are just not striking enough. It's quite a bland scheme, in my opinion. It's not that it's like it's not appealing. Like, obviously it's green and it's attention grabbing, but it's not a very distinctive style, and you really do have to look closely at it to see the effort that's gone into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I would say a lot of the ones that were in the cabinet were visually striking for some reason, but not technically well painted to a high standard when you look really up close. And I would honestly put my army in that category as well. Like, I haven't edge highlighted any model bar like 2, I think. Like, most of the army's a nice tabletop sort of standard, but it's got lots of conversions in it, and things like that. And it's just sort of got a nice sort of color scheme to it in terms of like the airbrushing and things like that. And like the Caldron Overlords, it visually looks great because of the sails on the boat, but then actually you look at the infantry and they're kind of really basic painted, but people aren't really looking at that. They're looking at the ships. I think the Sylvan F1 had a really interesting paint style. Like, the technique wasn't the normal heavy metal style, and it was very colorful. It wasn't necessarily like a painting technique that people would maybe consider like as a high standard. Like, it wasn't heavy metal. It wasn't like nicely blended. Like, you could sort of, it was almost painterly in a way where you could like see the brushstrokes and stuff, which some people might really like. It was very stylistic, I guess, like style over what would be considered, Golden Demon style painting techniques. So I think something visually striking does help you a lot to get in the cabinets, because a lot of the time people are walking past and looking at them from a distance. So it doesn't necessarily need to be technically well painted, although I think if you painted it very well, they will notice. But I think having a striking scheme is almost like step one to get them to notice the good paint job, basically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just to go back to a point Richie made earlier, like, I'm not actually a fan of LEDs. I find them disjointing for me. I appreciate the effort that goes into them, and I will never knock anyone on the effort they put into their army. But yeah, LEDs for some reason just irk me the wrong way.
I share that same feeling. I think it's because they're doing the job of what the painting should do. Like, it's giving you like OSL without painting the OSL. And to me, it's like, I would rather just see that painted on than it being physically replicated. And then when it's got flashing lights or something like that, I find it quite distracting. And often the kind of color hues that you get the LEDs in, I don't know, just feel a bit cheap, rather than like they're sort of quite garish colors, so they don't really blend in really well with the models. They're just almost like a bit too distracting. And I think in a way it's like, I imagine if you've come from like an RC, but playing with remote control trains or cars or whatever, where LEDs are a lot more common, you're probably mentally wired to look at them and be like, oh yeah, that's cool, it's adding to a model. Whereas from a tabletop perspective, it's really relatively new or not very common at all. So I find it really jarring to see. As you say, technical skill required to put them in, phenomenal. And people do a great job and they can look good. But for me, I just, not a fan of them. Put it this way, I don't think anyone would be winning a Golden Demon with an LED in. But if they did, would be
I'd be surprised.
That'd be impressive. I wouldn't have thought it would. I wouldn't have thought it would even qualify. I think it would be. I imagine it would be disqualified with an LED. Perhaps.
Yeah, I think
maybe not. Maybe I'm judging a bit too harshly.
With all the interviews I've heard about Golden Demon, there seems to be a very specific formula. They never mention what that formula is.
And people just
apparent,
guess what it is.
kind of, but apparently when you know, and then you are guaranteed a lot more higher finishing positions when you work it out, which
Right,
sounds
okay.
really elusive and ambiguous.
Is it a bit
But-
gatekeeping?
But that was like, that's from the interview of one of the Golden Demon / Slayer Sword winners. I've forgotten which one it was, but
Fair. Okay.
might have been the guy who was the controversy about AI artwork.
Was it AI or was it
He used
the
AI
3D printed stuff?
No,
Or was it the AI background?
it was the AI background. I think it was that one.
Okay. Was it Seraphon? I want to say it was a Seraphon and it was a jungle scene, or was it
it was an Eldar extradite.
Yeah,
That's why you're
okay.
thinking it was Seraphon. It was a
Yeah.
lovely model and obviously well painted.
Fair. Okay, cool. Yeah. Do you guys have any additional comments about the AOS event?
I want to do another one.
I want to do another one. I want to do a doubles again. I miss the doubles. I like the doubles because there's less reinforced units of all the buffs shenanigans. Because that's a big takeaway I have, is that is what, when AOS is currently the way AOS is written, when it takes up to the higher levels of gameplay, it's about reinforced units and the buffs you put on them, which I'm not really a fan of. So that's why I prefer doubles, because you can't really do that in the
Yeah, you can't do as much. Afterwards, it was one I was trying to come up with some new list ideas, but I was also a few days later I looked on BCP to realize I've played one game in BCP in terms of like the ITC scoreboard, and that was the doubles in January. I think it was January, and I'm like in 7th place for the UK Nighthaunt players, like as a faction. And then obviously this one should count as well, but it's not come up on there. But for UK Nighthaunt, you literally need to play 3 games and you would be in the top 1 position. Like, because most Nighthaunt players in the UK only play 2 games, it seems, or 3 max. So I think part of me is like, I'd love to just play like 2 or 3 more games, whether it's single or doubles, just to see if I can become best in faction, because it feels really easy for Nighthaunt because no one's playing them at the moment. So I might try and do that as a goal for the rest of the year, or before, whenever are they doing it on a yearly basis now? I think they are, because they used to have a really weird like time of year where they would reset all the scores, but I think it's now sort of more yearly.
No idea. I don't really pay attention to like the ITC stuff.
Because it used to reset after LVO, because that was the final, but now the World Championships are in December, I think, because they're now run by GW.
I didn't even realize, I didn't think that AOS players were as into that kind of scene as the 40k players are.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I don't want to do it to be like, I'm actually a good player. It's more like, this feels like a really low-hanging fruit to achieve, despite being not a great Nighthaunt player. Because I just don't think the list I have is particularly competitive with horses, basically, especially since the new battle tome. So I'd have to completely pivot. But yeah, the next thing I really want to paint up is the Black Coach, because that'd be a nice centerpiece model for my army, I think. I think that's really what I need to get done next. And hopefully the Scourge of Grand rules will still exist for it, because that's half decent. Cool. Any more comments from you guys?
No, I'm just waiting for the new Ogre range to come out. So that is coming out.
Fingers crossed. Well, it seems like I watched Rob's Honest Wargamer take, and it seems like they're doing very well faction-wise at the moment.
They are at the moment. I hope the range looks cool. I hope it looks awesome. I'm struggling to work out what army I'm going to do next for AOS. I definitely want to do another army, but with all the rumors flying around about the Dwarden or Khazalids, ogres, I just don't want to pull the trigger on anything just yet.
That's fair. There's no point doing it, especially when ogres are such an old range.
Really old range.
And if they get a refresh, pretty much 90% of those models will change over the life cycle of that range refresh, although I imagine they'll get a sort of semi-decent range refresh initially, but not everything. But, probably the core things, like I imagine it'll be the generic ogres and not the snow ogres. And I imagine those will get redone at a later time if I was to speculate a guess.
Probably.
Yeah, but who knows for sure. But yeah, I mean, when I was playing them, I was like, oh, wow, this seems fun. They're all flat 2, flat 3 damage, which sounds great, but they're all like hitting on 4s, wounding on 2s. I think they've all got 5 up saves.
Mm-hmm.
I was asking Jack Latter, what do you think about them? He's like, yeah, they're very swingy. They're fun, but they're not good, even though they currently are very good for some reason. Or there's some bits in their current battle tome which makes them good. So yeah, it'd be exciting to see what a range refresh for them would be. I think overall I was like, I need just a lower model count army, because as much as I love a little chain gasps, there's just so many models on the table. It's a lot to... It's not even like when you're actually playing the game, it's fine. It's like the setup takes forever. Like it takes ages in like a Warhammer World stuff. Like you've got to set up the objectives, you've got to place all the terrain around. That's at least 10 minutes gone. Then you've got to put all your models down and do deployment. That takes forever. So a way that could speed that up and also speed up playing the game in general with less models, I think would be beneficial. I think I'd like that.
So is this like an indication? Well, if the range appeals to me aesthetically, is this going to be our next doubles list, Ogres and Ogres?
I mean, it could be, purely because I think I could get them painted up quicker than most other armies. So I've got I've got Soulblight Gravelords to still do. That's an army I'm semi-working on. I've technically got Hellsmiths of his ship, but I don't know how I'm feeling about those now, just because it feels like a lot of models. They're not as elite as I was hoping they were going to be. My other sort of fun army idea was Giants using old Warhammer Fantasy models, but that is prohibitively expensive using eBay models, because I want the old Rangers that are out of production, unless the old world brings some of them back. So I don't think I'm really going to do that one. I don't really think I want Cogforts as an army. Maybe would want one for my Night Hunt, but I don't think I'd want that as an army. Yeah, maybe something like Ogres. I don't know. So that's always the downside with AOS, is trying to find the spark to get behind a faction. I find quite difficult. So I think a little bit more to my Nighthawk, and then probably Soulblight Gravelords is what I'll do next, even though that's not a low model count army. But it's what it is.
It is basically what it is, mate.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's it for this section. We will get on with whatever comes next. We'll do a transitional noise. This week's 5-star review comes from Apple Podcasts of the United Kingdom, featuring someone called ... Dan ... He says, like listening to two old mates. Wait, that's exactly what it is. I'm a recent listener in the grand scheme of things, been on board a few months now. Some things happened in my life, which means I have a lot of time on my hand at present. What better way to fill it in than by painting toys and listening to you guys wax lyrical about all things Warhammer? Dan and Phil's approach to the subject is brilliant. The episodes have a great variety, and the passion you both have for the subject is almost inspiring. Inspiring to do what I don't know, but inspiring nonetheless. The episodes with the Demon Primarch showdown is a personal favourite, and in my opinion was great fun from a listener's perspective. I'm waffling now, and I've taken up enough of your time. Long may you continue to walk in the light of the Emperor, beloved by all. And then he gives his Instagram, another 40k nerd. So it'll just be me doing that, but surely we will go and check out your Instagram. Yeah, so thank you, Dan. Not the regular Dan, a different Dan. So obviously you are up there with someone that has also another great name. You are up there in the Dans. Well done. Yeah, thank you very much. Glad you're enjoying the show. Obviously, Dan is no longer with us because he has had to leave the podcast. So I hope you're enjoying it when it's just me and occasionally a couple of other people. So I hope you're enjoying it. Yeah, the Demon Primarch sort of showdown that we did, the Kotok is called, was great fun. So I'm glad you enjoyed that one. And yeah, but thank you very much. If you'd like to be like Dan and leave us a 5-star review, you can do so on all good podcast kind of apps, Audible, Spotify, mostly Apple Podcasts. That's where you can actually leave an actual review. I think Audible can as well. Spotify, you can't. You can just leave a 5-star, but that would still be greatly appreciated. And likewise, you can. And also, I'm accepting 5-star reviews from the YouTube comments. Just start your comment with 5 stars, and I will include it into the list of 5 stars that I read out. That is all greatly appreciated. If you would also like to support the show, you can obviously like and subscribe. That's always greatly appreciated. You can join us over on Patreon, where you get access to some exclusive bonus content. And when things quieten down here, I will have time to edit together a couple of bits that I've already put together for you and put that out. So there'll be some new stuff coming soon, hopefully. Likewise, there's also merch on Red Level where you can buy some t-shirts. Just t-shirts. There's nothing else there. But you can buy some lovely t-shirts. So all of that stuff is good. And thank you very much if you've done any of that. Now let's take a deep dive into another 40k nerd on Instagram. We're in the world of YouTube. If you're watching along, I thought I'd actually show you another 40k nerd's Instagram. It's also quite short, so it's quite straightforward. So let's have a look at it and make some polite comments. It says not too many posts, but some of the stuff is really interesting. So obviously we've got some AOS minis here, some gorgeous kind of color schemes. I like the black and the pink, sort of a kind of cyberpunk almost color schemes, and also the water effects. The coloring is also really nice here as well. So this is the Idenef Deepkin. Really great use of a sort of black background, so the models sort of stand out. Really nice. I like the look. Yeah, the base is super simple, but very effective in terms of the sort of water wash effect that it is creating. Yeah, some really good models. Lots of Idenef Deepkin. Some more Idenef Deepkin. Hold on, there's two images on little sort of almost like mini display stands, or it's like a water effect maybe. I think they're just like mini display stands. Then we've got the lion for 40k. Such a gorgeous mini. Some nice basing details. Really nice sort of crisp and clean paint job. Some nice sort of blending on the cape. So yeah, a really sort of solid paint scheme there, basically. And yeah, really good sort of photography skills as well, which is actually a skill in and of itself. Trying to take good photos, I think, for your miniatures is difficult. And it's something even I struggle with sometimes, especially this sort of light box setup. So they've done a great job. I don't really do it like this. I'm not quite as a professional. So yeah, really impressive stuff. Then we've got some Slaves to Darkness for Age of Sigmar. Wow, that's a really impressive chariot. I do really like that. That is quite an old model, but looks very cool. That's really impressive. So that's the spearhead, he says. Some close-ups of the paint for Rogel Dawn. Not Rogel Dawn, the Lion, Lionel Johnson. That looks really nice. And then we've got some squigs. Cave Squigs Loon Boss, it says. First miniature of 2026. So relatively new in terms of painting. But you're already off to a great start. It's very impressive in terms of the stuff that you've done. Especially if you're like a relatively new painter, like this is really good stuff, I would say. Again, like the sort of texture, basing details. That's really nice. Yeah. And then I think this is maybe the last one. Yes, this is the last one. This is Converted War Dog. So again, quite impressive. You've added some elements to it, I think, so the arms of the standard War Dogs, the standard armigers, not the Chaos ones, but obviously you've added loads of Chaos elements to it, such as the chains and the trophy racks. So that's a great way of, rather than using I assume you haven't used any parts from the original, like, kind of Chaos War Dogs, and you've just made one yourself from the armature kit. So that looks really good. Nice. Like, the detailing on the armor is very cool. I like all of that sort of... Yeah, I assume it's like runic detail, but gives it a nice sort of mottled effect. Really reminiscent. I guess it's just chipping, maybe. But it really reminds me how they do the armor panels on... the Titans, especially in the sort of Forge World modeling masterclass style. It gives it a real sort of, I don't know, a real like depth and texture to it, which is very good here. So that's a lot of sort of chipping, highlighting, edge highlighting work that you've done there. And again, another interesting style of base. So you've sort of got everything from water to sort of mud to snow. It's good that you've sort of branched out with all your models and doing different things across all your models, whereas I tend to be hideously consistent. It's like, I've done a textured base and this mud, and I've done that pretty much across all my settings. So I do need to branch out a bit more and try be a bit more diverse in terms of techniques and also basing methods. So this is really good. Very impressive start to the year. You've done an awful lot. Keep up the great work, basically. And if anyone would like to follow another 40k nerd, you can do so. I obviously have given him a follow as well. With that all said and done, we're now going to transition to the outro. Transitional noise. Welcome to the outro. It's just me for this portion of the outro. I'm going to keep it quite brief. I was thinking about talking about the pre-painted terrain, all the latest updates for Warhammer 40k, the new edition. It's all quite exciting at the moment, and there's a lot to cover. But I thought that would actually be better served being done in the next episode, and hopefully I could have Tim or Richie on to also discuss some of those things. The painted terrain seems to have a bit of controversy around it, but I think overall it's probably going to be a positive thing for some people, and then the people that aren't really keen on it will just avoid it, because they have announced that you can get the unpainted version as well. In terms of hobbying that I've done, not a huge amount of actual hobbying. Instead, what I've been doing is shed hobbying, which is basically completing my gaming table, which is, you can watch along on YouTube, you can see. So I've got a gaming table from Arbor Gardens, and then I've customized it with some extra shelving that I've made myself, which basically stores all the Forge World gaming tiles that I have. And if you could see on the other side, there's some extra shelving for what will be Necromunda tiles, or maybe sort of boarding actions style, if I sort of mount my terrain on pre-made tiles. So I'm thinking about doing that. So the gap here is obviously 2 foot for the sort of traditional Realm of Battle tiles, and then the other side that you can't quite see is 1 foot sort of spacing for like slide-on racks, basically, for these sort of shelves. I've recorded a video as I built it, so whenever I get time, which is very little to do my own sort of YouTube content outside of the podcast, but hopefully I will edit together a little video on how I built and customized that gaming table, basically. But yeah, Arbor Gardens in the UK do these great sort of worktop benches, and there's a 4 foot depth one, and it can come in 180 centimeter width, which is basically 6 foot. It's just shy of 6 foot, but it's just enough for the tiles to sit on. Element Games, in some of their stores, use the same table, and that's where I got the idea for using it. And this one comes on wheels. You can get one without wheels. You can get one that has a shelf all the way along the bottom. I got the one without the middle shelf. It still comes with a shelf on the bottom. So that's basically what I've been doing this week. There will be a game of I'm playing on Monday after this episode comes out. I think the penultimate game of the 500 Worlds campaign that I've been taking part in, it will be myself and Michael, who's my team, because we're Team Xenos, effectively, even though I'm playing my Thunder Warriors. And so he's got Drakari, I've got Count as Custodes, but the team narrative is that we're being led by an Inquisitor, who I do have. Sadly, I don't have it to hand to show you, but I do have him built. It was the Erasmus model. I need to get him painted up, basically. Probably not in time for, sadly, this game, but I will hopefully get it for the final game. So yeah, Monday should be an interesting game. It'll be against Dan from the podcast, X-Podcast, and Spike. They're Team Imperials. They're both playing Space Marines, Blood Angels and Ultramarines, so that will be a good showdown. Potentially, we should have also got another game in against the Team Chaos guys, but Richie, who recently had surgery, probably might not be up for a game just yet, but maybe we'll be able to squeeze it in before we do this big finale game, which is going to be a big mass 2v2v2, so all 6 of us playing. Although potentially what we might do is the losing team will split off. So it's basically a one side versus another. So a 3v3 game. I think that was the initial plan that Spike, who is the sort of campaign manager, arbitrator, I think he said that's what we'd do. So we might do that, I think, and I'll keep you updated with how that also goes. But that'll be the big final game. We're playing on the Jamigan Bridge board up at Warhammer World for a day. We're just going up there, and we've got the table booked, so that'll be a fun day out, basically, up to Nottingham and back in a day. Is always a bit much, but it's always doable, and it should be fun as well. So that is planned, I think, for next month. So yeah, there'll be some gaming beforehand, which will hopefully set things up in terms of that final game. So I think there's all to play for at the moment in terms of points. I think this game on Monday will have a big swing in terms of the amount of points that we can have. I think currently myself and Michael are leading, but I think by like 1 point, and I think Dan and Spike are in second place, and then Richie and Jack, I think, are losing slightly, but I can't remember. I don't know how their last game went. So if they had won their last game, then actually they'd probably be neck and neck with all of us, because it was relatively close. So yeah, that would be interesting to see how that goes. Yeah, that's it in terms of hobbying stuff. Yeah, in terms of stuff I would like to get done, obviously fresh from my grand tournament for AOS, I'm very keen to get some more Age of Sigmar stuff painted. I've been looking at lots of Nighthaunt stuff. I really like the chain rasps. I'd almost be tempted to get more of them or find ways to buff them. But basically, maybe I need to just have less heroes and actually lean more into the units. So I do have a unit of Blade Gas semi-built. So they're the ones with the big swords. So maybe I need to get those built and painted and do more infantry units and just take heroes that buff with maybe one kind of combat hero, whereas my current sort of setup is more combat heroes. So yeah, I think there's lots I could do with my Nighthaunt army. I would definitely also like to do the coach. I think coach would be really interesting. My grand plan has always been to do a sort of horse-heavy army, like all cavalry themed. So that is possible, but that would require 2 coaches and some more Dreadblade Harrows, I think. And Dreadblade Harrows are actually quite fun because they're always 2 damage, regardless of whether they've charged or not. And I think that's quite useful because the regular Hex race are very weak in basically a turn that isn't mine, because they're only doing 1 damage. So they're only good on the charge, basically. And yeah, they just don't seem that great anymore. They were really good at the start of the edition. They were pretty good. But not so much now with all the changes that has happened and points changes and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely some things I'd like to do with Nighthaunt. I've obviously keep brewing different ideas around another army. I've got some Soulblight Gravelords. I've got some Hellsmiths of Hashut. I've always really wanted to do a pirate-themed army, whether that's like Vampire Coast and sort of converting my vampire army up to that, but I don't really feel like that's possible. I sort of would just want to build my vampires to be standard vampires. I really like the idea of doing a Trug army themed to like sort of pirates, give them all hats and have little guys riding around them. Potentially, with the relative rumours of ogres coming and having played against ogres to see how punchy they are, a sort of pirate themed ogre army would be quite fun. Because I do like the idea of a low model count army, because that's sort of the downside with Nighthaunt is you're just pushing around a ton of models for absolute ages, and the game slows down quite a lot because they're a real attrition army and they don't have a lot of punch. So, they're not killing enough of the opponent to meaningfully speed up the game. And sometimes you're also eking out your models as long as possible if you can have some recursion and bring some models back on the table. So it ends up for being a very slow game, basically. So something that can do some punch and be fewer models, I think would be great. A quick game is often a fun game because if you're winning or losing, it ends up finishing quite quickly. So yeah, I think that's all for this episode. I don't want to wrap it on for too long, but we'd call it a day there, and hopefully we'll be talking about some 40k interesting stuff next episode. Until then, take care and bye-bye. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye.